It's another beautiful day here in South Yorkshire, as you can see, and this is the only spot I can find outside that is vaguely dry. We are right by the pump out station and fuel dock. We've come in early because we're about to do a pump out. Why am I telling you about this? Well, because hopefully this is going to be the last pump out we ever do. And that is because we are installing a new separating toilet. There it is, ready to be installed. What's important here is that we do this pump out because once we take the old toilet out, we can't really do a pump out. What happens is when you do the pump out, it creates quite a bit of suction, and the waste pipe from the toilet causes a bit of a vacuum, and that sucks water in. So the problem is once we cap that off, which is what we plan to do when we put the new toilet in, we will no longer be able to pump out. Granted, there's a breather pipe, but it doesn't really keep up with the suction of the actual pump itself. So this is why we've got to do this first before we can think about installing the toilet. So what we're finding is that when we just do a straight pump out, that's the big green thing, and pump out the remains of the tank, we're now getting to the point where it's all just clear water coming out. But when Liz pours down hot water down the loo, it suddenly gets a splurge and it comes out rather brown. So that's what we're doing now, is we're just going to put lots of hot water down via the toilet just to try and clear out what's sitting at the bottom of that holding tank.
So what we're talking here is a separating toilet, not to be confused with a composting toilet. A separating toilet takes the solids and the urine and divides them. So when you go to the loo, all your poo goes down into one bucket and the urine goes into a different channel. So that's why it's called a separating unit. And the reason it isn't a composting unit is that unless you actually make that area where the solids land into a compost compartment, they're just going to sit there. But what you can do is you can then use that faeces as it's sitting there, once it's filled up the bucket, you can use that to make human manure and compost. And that is something that we hope to do in the future. One of the things that we both worried about slightly was the smell. When we went to see our friend's boat, we realised they don't actually smell at all. It's the urine that smells. If you go into a public toilet, especially in a men's toilet when you've got lots of urinals, what you're getting is the smell of the urine. It's the uric acid that causes these smells, and also that build-up of crystals. We also have a built-in fan, and that fan works on the solids by extracting the smell but also extracting the moisture. So those solids in there are gradually drying up, and I'll tell you something, dried poo doesn't smell of anything. So that's drying up nicely and it's getting smaller. So you might think filling a bucket with poo is not going to take very long, but in fact it's reducing all the time, and it should, we hope, last at least 6 weeks, if not longer.
First, we need to decommission the old toilet. There are a number of fittings to remove, including the old waste pipe, the water supply for the flushing mechanism, and the control panel. We bought blanking caps for the pipes, but in the near future we plan to install a trigger shower so that we can flush the wee compartment. Next, we had to remove the old silicone. At this point we were unsure if the tiles were cut around the toilet or if the loo was mounted on top of them. I came across this magic solution called D-Bond Marine Formula. Just a few squirts of this rather expensive potion and a couple of minutes of scraping and the toilet came loose. One of the problems that I hadn't considered is that the bathroom is tiled, and those tiles are not flat. If you add to the fact that this is a PVC toilet, not a porcelain toilet, it means that when you sit on it, there's a slight wobble. But more importantly, when you lean to one side to clean your business, there's a lot of pressure on one side. And because of that slight wobble, just sticking it down with CT1, which is what I was going to use, an adhesive sealant. I don't know, I didn't want to be in a situation where a week later that sealant just pops up and the whole thing starts moving. So I've resigned myself to drilling it. Okay, so inside here, this is the plate. Now this moves the bucket inside. Each time you sit on it, it will click and move. And then you can see there are 3 holes which you have to line up. And so I was able to sort that out. I was actually quite pleased with that because I wasn't sure what was underneath this. This tile is approximately 5mm thick. And then of course underneath that it's laying on something. Now, looking at my sample over here, what I could see was that there was literally a 3mm ply board and then beams. So there's actually gaps. And as it turns out, I missed the beam on this one. So I think that went through, as I say, maybe 3mm of wood. But there's obviously a beam, horizontal beam running across here, because I was able to drill through about, I don't know, 15 to 20mm of wood. So I'm very pleased with that. So I've just sort of vaguely bolted these in place just to make sure that I've actually got the thing lined up, because the next thing I need to do is to locate exactly where the fume exhaust outlet, I'll call it the exhaust outlet, it's not. This is a built-in fan. It runs constantly. It's a little 12-volt computer fan that's tucked up in there. And all that does is it provides a draft to suck up any fumes in here and send it out through my conduit, which is going to go out of the boat. It runs all the time. I've been assured that it's very quiet. It uses very little energy. But what we need to do is to drill through the tiles and then the wall to run a conduit pipe through there, another 90-degree bend, and out the side of the boat.
You may be wondering why we're getting rid of a perfectly good pump-out toilet and replacing it. There are a few reasons for this, and the first one is that the tank would fill up usually within 4 weeks. So you're filling up and then pumping out every 4 weeks, and that pump-out charge can be quite expensive. The other thing is that with pump-out loos dotted around the network, quite a few of them don't work, so you're desperately going from place to place trying to find somewhere to pump out. The tank gauge in our system didn't work, so we never knew quite how much was in there and quite when we would need to pump out. So we devised a tally method, so every time we went to the loo, or every time we flushed the loo, we would tally it. And we knew roughly after 4 or 5 lines in our notebook that we were ready for a pump out, but it was a real pain to have to do that. And you might say, well, you could replace the gauge. Not really much point, as they never work. Now the smell on the pump out wasn't great. They often smell, and there are ways around it, and we tried various methods, but we always ended up with, when you flushed, a burp of water or air would come back up, and that would smell. Not the worst smell in the world, it's kind of sweet, sewagey smell, but it would infuse the boat with smell, and it really, we'd had enough of it, and so that's another main reason for putting the Separett toilet in. So in a nutshell, there will be no more smells. We will now not be pumping out at all. We'll have to change the bucket much less frequently, maybe 8 weeks we're looking at. We will then compost the manure, and we'll be no longer doing any bloody tallying.
So here we are in the cupboard. This is behind the toilet. You can just see the exhaust pipe exit there, and that is going to go out through a side fitting. As you can see, I've drilled a 120mm hole there for a 50mm skin fitting. So I thought I was going to be clever and just drill my hole using my cordless drill from the inside. However, because of the design of cordless drills, it couldn't get beyond the thickness. You can see here the insulation and the board, so I wouldn't have been able to have cut through entirely from the inside. So instead I've had to drill a pilot hole from this side and then drill the main hole from the outside. One thing to note, however, is this. As you can see, we've got a nice big thick insulation there, but I took it back to bare metal, and this was a bit of a mistake. You'll notice that when the professionals put a skin fitting in, they don't peel off the foam right back to the metal, and that's because you end up getting condensation. Now, it's not really going to come out in camera here, but at the bottom there is a little pool of condensation, and that came about from exposing that bare metal. So after I've finished the job, I've bought some insulation foam to fill in that hole once more. I'm going to do the same down here. This is the old exit from the previous toilet. That's now taking the 12-volt cable to run the fan for our new toilet. And the other thing as well was, because this is 80mm rather than the prescribed 75mm, there's a little bit of play in the pipe, which is to my advantage, but what it does mean is that that pipe, when it comes through here, isn't supported. So I'm just going to put a shim underneath just to support that pipe, and may actually fill this up with insulating foam as well. So it's going to come out elbow, a bit of solid pipe, and then we've got some flexible hose because there is a slight incline here as it exits out of here, but I'll show you all that when I get around to doing it. So next job now is to drill that pilot hole from the inside. I've just made a ridiculous schoolboy error. So drilled my way through the side of the boat, and that all went well. It took about, I don't know, maybe 1mm a minute, so less than 10 minutes to cut through it. That was all good, nice clean cut, no burning of the paint on the outside, so I was very happy with that. So I rushed to pick up my skin fitting, took it out of the packaging, went to put it on, and it doesn't fit. This is a 2-inch skin fitting, but the threaded part is wider, so it wouldn't fit. It was, however, quite fortuitous. In a panic, I nipped up to the chandlery and found a brass deck drain that had a straight 2-inch thread. It has a different concave profile, but because this is an air vent mounted well above the boot top, this shouldn't be an issue, and it should be well clear of potential obstacles. In fact, after mounting it, it looks rather neat. Before I put all this together, I thought it was just quickly worth showing you what I'm planning to do and how I'm managing to reduce the pipe. So with the skin fitting here, it goes in like so, and that's approximately 2 inches just under. So this is an inside diameter 2mm hose. That's literally just going to connect that to this. This is a reducer that takes you from 75 to 50. This reducer and also this flexible pipe here I bought from a wood tool merchant that sell parts for wood machinery. So this is actually an extraction hose. So it's a flexible hose, because it's UK based, it's rated at 75mm inside diameter. So that is designed to go on that. That's fine. That runs all the way down to eventually the proper piping that we got from our toilet package, which is 75mm outside diameter. What I only discovered halfway through doing this project is that this is a Swedish company that provide this toilet, so all of their measurements are outside diameter. It turns out that in Europe they do all their plumbing by outside diameter. Here in the UK, of course, we use inside diameter. It's a little bit frustrating when you don't know where to source these parts from, or if you're buying in advance and you're buying things working on a 75mm inside ID. But we got there in the end. So this all looks a bit convoluted, but I think by the time it's all set up, it should be pretty straightforward. One last thing, a little tip I picked up, because of course I'm used to GRP and putting skin fittings through GRP. Of course now we're dealing with steel. So it was recommended to me that before I put the skin fitting through the side of the boat is to run some epoxy around the raw metal, the bit that I've just cut out. So I'll put some epoxy around the bare metal. Then of course I'll be using an adhesive sealant to bond this to the hull. What we can see here is the side of the boat just through there with the brass skin fitting. Then that hose which connects to this reducer. Now the hose came packed with a slight angle to it, so I used that to my advantage, and the bit that I've cut is angled ever so slightly upwards. I've built up a little bit of silicone to act as a wall, so that if water does come in, it can only get as far as that silicone. And then the last thing is this little mesh thing. Now this I cut out from the roof cowl vent that comes supplied with the toilet that I'm not using. It's quite a tight fit, but I'm going to leave it loose just in case in future we have to get to it to clean it up. But that's basically pretty much the fitting done, and now we're back to our 75mm to continue down to our little elbow connection, which will be in there. Last thing I'm going to do is just tape this up and then chuck the insulating foam back inside there to insulate it all up. Toilet has been stuck down. It's now held in place. What I did was to put the bolts in loosely just to make sure I had the position correct. Then I drew a line in pencil around the outer edge of the bottom of the base there, undid the screws, lifted the toilet up and slapped in a whole load of CT1, which is an adhesive sealant. Emphasis on the adhesive more than the sealant. It's nice and strong. At the back end there, you can't quite see it, I put in a shim, which is a door stopper cut down to size, just to stop the movement of that toilet. And that's where the gap is. So I put an extra load of adhesive sealant down the back end. I then ran a bead of sealant around the inside of my pencil line, put the toilet down in place, and then screwed it down from the inside. So that was nice and firm, and then ran an extra bead of adhesive sealant around the outside. So, how'd you find the loo?
It's just in there on the right. We've been using it for what, 3 days?
Yep.
Found it a bit difficult to begin with. I wasn't quite sure how to sit, where to sit. As a woman, you've got slightly different problems in that your pee comes out at a strange angle. You never quite know where it's going to go. So just had to be a bit more mindful. Other than that, I'm absolutely beyond speaking how brilliant it is.
I think what has shocked us both is the lack of smell.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was just thinking about this now. If you think about it, you have an extractor fan right by your bum.
Yes.
So even the normal smells that you'd associate after doing your business, they just don't exist.
Yeah, when you've been to the loo, I can walk straight in and brush my teeth. I haven't got to worry about it.
There's none of this, I'd give that 5 minutes if I were you kind of scenario. So yeah, it's been great.
Is this normal and will it continue? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I hope so. So you're probably asking about poos and wees and where they go. So with wees, we have a couple of options. We can either divert that back into the holding tank. Of course, it would take a lot longer for the holding tank to fill up. The other option, of course, is just to put it directly into a bottle, which is what we're doing at the moment, and that just allows us to use the L-sand points. And I suppose, ultimately, you could probably just dump it in the woods somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think urine's a problem, is it? It's the faeces you've got to worry about.
Yeah.
But you can, I mean, everybody pees in the woods. Dogs pee in the woods, all the animals pee in the woods.
Bears shit in the woods.
Yeah, they all do. But obviously it's difficult when it comes to the solid side of things.
Well, I don't think it is so difficult actually, because as you said in the video, is that it doesn't take up as much room as you'd think it would. And when it starts drying, it does sort of compact down. And We know a friend who you mentioned in the video who said that he emptied his bucket after 3 months.
Yes.
Now, granted, he's a solo boater, but 3 months before having to empty the bucket is pretty good going, isn't it?
Well, now I've seen the results of 3 days, I can understand why, because even now already it's starting to dry and it is starting to compact down. So I think we should be good for 6 weeks easily. So I've been looking into exactly how we're going to compost it, because I'm really keen to do that, because if anyone's been watching this, they'll know I'm keen on gardening and I want to make our own compost from human manure, which is what it's called, which you can do. So you can do hot composting or you can do cold composting. I won't go into the details, but we can do one or the other. It's just a question of which one. I'm just fine-tuning my ideas to decide which one, but basically we'll have a compost bin in the engine compartment.
Yeah, it should be. We've got plenty of room.
Yeah.
We should make the point that it is legal to dump human waste in some locations.
Only in some, yeah.
And not on the CRT network, not on the canal network. The CRT specifically say not to dump your waste in their bins, but you can dump it in household waste. And as one of the reasons why we started looking at it was when we discussed this in a video a few months ago, many of you pointed out, of course, that nappies, or diapers as the Americans call it, are dumped in household waste every day. And there must be millions of nappies being dumped in household waste every day. So,
and we've got dog poo going in bins everywhere, including the CRT. It doesn't really make logical sense that you can't do it, but they brought the rule in a couple of years ago that there's to be no more human waste going into their bins. So we've got to be a little bit more careful. But as I say, we want to compost anyway. We use a lot of vegetables and fruit because we're vegetarian, so we have a lot of that going on. And at the moment, we're having to just put it in landfill because we've got nowhere else to put it. This way, we'll have our own composting bin, which will be, majority will be peelings, and then every couple of months or so, we'll add human manure to it. And while we'll be able to use it for composting for flowers, it's probably not safe early on to use it for composting for things we're going to eat.
Yep.
That's all I'll say on that.
Yep, okay. Well, I have to say, I am super pleased. It took weeks of planning. I did mention briefly in the video this problem with European-sized pipe fittings versus British. And I had made a couple of mistakes because I was trying to buy all the spare hoses and what have you before we bought the loo. I think if we bought the loo first, I would have been a bit more aware of these differences in sizes.
Yeah,
but,
I kept putting the handbrake on until I knew you were 100% sure that you knew what you were doing. But you did approach it like a military exercise, and I mean, bloody well done, because you started and you just focused on it, but it took 2 days?
2 days, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, really well done there.
Okay. Right, well, happy pooing. And hopefully we'll see you one more time before Christmas. But if we don't, then happy Christmas. Oh,
oh, that was a bang outside, wasn't it? You just heard a bang.
That's Marley saying happy Christmas to you.
Come on, Marley, it's okay now. Yeah, they've stopped. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Oh.
And hopefully in January we will be leaving the marina and starting our continuous cruising. We're hoping to do that. We're not setting anything in stone. We've still got a few things to tidy up here before we leave, but yeah, off we go.